In early 2002, the highly anticipated Medal of Honor Allied Assault was released for the PC. It was an intense World War II shooter and one of the biggest hits of the year. However, just after the game went gold in late 2001, 22 members of developer 2015, including the project leads, abandoned ship. Frustrated by the limitations imposed on them by the studio, and by their publishing overlords, they realized that the only way to make the games they wanted was to start their own company. Finding a name proved to be more difficult than intended, and they finally went with the only name they could come up with that wasn't totally awful, even though it had no real meaning. And so began Infinity Ward. These 22 veterans of the Medal of Honor series were bursting with ideas that they hadn't been allowed to implement. For example, they wanted to show World War II as a truly global war, and yet every game, including Allied Assault, was always from an American perspective. They also wanted to have more varied experiences peppered throughout the game. They wanted to have defensive levels and not merely offensive ones, and even wanted one level where the player had no gun at all. This latter was strictly forbidden by their old employers. But perhaps most importantly, the newly formed Infinity Ward wanted to have a game that felt as authentic as possible, not only through accurate models and sound, but that felt real. As such, they wanted to get away from the macho heroism of games like Allied Assault.
You have been assigned to a mission few would qualify for. A mission few would survive.
And make the player feel more like one hapless soldier fighting against incredible odds. And so they set off to do exactly that, all on their very own. They decided to work with the same engine as Allied Assault, the aging Quake 3 engine, modified by the Return to Castle Wolfenstein team, then modified again by Infinity Ward. The resulting engine was so different that it was almost brand new. With it, they were able to have a fantastic looking game, even in the early stages, and its look, not to mention the pedigree of its developers, drew the attention of a major publisher. Activision was so impressed by what they saw of the upstart company that they bought them outright in 2002, over a year before the game would be released. But while the game looked top-notch, the developer knew that realism depended on more than just graphics. They hired military historians as consultants and interviewed WW2 veterans about their experiences, so that the game would feel authentic as well.
Oh, I need some cover!
As such, the way that squad mates moved together and even the way they talked to each other would be true to reality. Such was the level of research that the slang and tone of the dialogue was different depending on which nationality the gamer was playing. Also important for an engrossing experience was sound. Infinity Ward painstakingly recreated the sound of each weapon at different distances, hooked up to a full surround sound system, and you would feel like you were actually there. On top of all this, Infinity Ward wanted their game to be intense in a way no shooter had achieved before. They achieved this through carefully crafted levels, designed so that the enemies could attack from anywhere. The player would have to be on his toes at all times if he wanted to survive, and the enemies were both relentless and innumerable. The game would also feature many scripted elements to give the game the feel of a living, breathing world. In fact, the game would feature several segments when the player couldn't actually play, only look around and experience what it was like to be in that unbelievable war. Finally, the new studio reached out to Hollywood to ensure that even the voice acting was high caliber. Jason Statham and Giovanni Ribisi are two of the more famous names who signed on, but the voice cast all round was stellar, helping to immerse the player fully into a world 60 years gone.
Sergeant Evans, glad you're still with us. We're in luck. Find a good spot to suppress their bunker.
In April 2003, Activision announced the title, Call of Duty. Ambitiously, they made special note that this was the name of a new brand, not just a new game. Even at this early stage, they fully expected an entire slate of games to be released with time. And when the game released on October 29, 2003, they found that their faith in the freshman developer had been justified. The game received rave reviews from critics everywhere and was a smash hit. The game featured everything Infinity Ward had set out to accomplish, and their belief in authentic gameplay, immersive experiences, and varied mission types was mirrored by audiences' enthusiastic reactions. In particular, the first Russian level, in which the player navigates through Stalingrad without a weapon, the idea that their old employers had strictly prohibited became one of the game's most iconic moments. The gamble paid off. Call of Duty won dozens of Game of the Year awards, and inadvertently, Infinity Ward helped spawn the World War II shooter craze that flooded the market in years to come. If there was one drawback to Call of Duty, it was that the game was only available on the PC, and not for the ever-expanding console market. As they began work on the inevitable sequel, they had consoles in mind, and to their pleasant surprise, found that Microsoft had their sights trained on them. Tune in next time to see Call of Duty open a second front on the console world.